Hello and welcome back to Desert DIY. If you are new here, my name is Corey. Today I'm going to be fixing up these two side tables. The one right here I got from my mom and she thrifted it. I don't remember where or when or how much she spent on it, but she is downsizing and getting rid of a lot of stuff, so she gave this to me to work on. And the other one I got for free in somebody's carport. I was actually going to pick up something else that they were throwing away and they had this there, so I said, hey, are you getting rid of that too? And they said yes, so I grabbed it as quick as I could and got out of there. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take off the handles here, and I use a drill when I can because it goes by so much faster that way. And I'm going to keep this hardware. It's not the greatest, but I'm still going to keep it in case I can paint it and use it again in the future. And as you can see, this is not an antique. There is plastic inside the drawers, so that shows you that it is not that old. But here are all the four handles. And now I'm going to just change out the tip on my drill so that I can take the handles off of the other piece. I first put that one on and then decided I wanted to use a smaller one. So I put a smaller flathead tip on here, and that way I can remove the handles on the other piece since it was a flathead instead of a Phillips like the other one. I did this with my left hand and I am terrible at using my left hand, so give me a break. This video is in collaboration with Ashley Lauren, and she is amazing, you guys. She is a mom with young kids and she is still busting her butt fixing up furniture, and she is so creative and meticulous. Her projects are absolutely gorgeous, so make sure you go check her out in the description box after you're done watching this video. She's going to be making over two side tables as well, and hers are really beautiful. I got to see a sneak peek of them on her Instagram and they really look beautiful. So now I'm just sanding the piece, and I'm using 220 grit here. This piece was super shiny. It had like a really thick polyurethane on it, and I'm just getting it to where the paint will stick to it that I'm going to be using. And you just quickly go over it with your sander on all the flat areas and make sure that you rough it up really nice so that way your paint sticks really well. You don't have any issues with peeling. Now I'm going to fill in the holes with wood filler, and any other cracks on the pieces I will be using the same wood filler on. The problem with wood filler for me is that it dries so fast while I'm applying it, since I live in such a dry climate, that I have to keep getting the wood filler wet and adding water to it as I'm using it because it just dries so fast. But I just filled in these holes. I was using just a scraper because I didn't have the correct tool here, but you could use any kind of flat surface like this to get it in there, although there are other tools that are better for this application, but this worked just fine. Now I'm going to use these hardware for the pieces, and I want them to be silver because my husband doesn't like gold and he prefers silver over gold, and this is going to be something that stays in our home. So I'm going to just spray paint them silver. These I got off Amazon for super cheap. I think it was like less than 50 cents a piece or something like that. I have them linked in my Amazon store in the description box if you want to pick them up. Time to paint. So for this paint, I'm going to just be using Clark & Kensington flat enamel. Enamel paint is pretty thick and will need to be watered down, and it also is really durable. I absolutely love using enamel paint for finishes that are white, especially because they just, I don't know, there's just something really nice about the finish that they give. And I use flat because flat paint sticks better, kind of like how chalk paint sticks better to things, although this is not the same as chalk paint where you don't have to sand. You would need to sand to use this paint. But I'm just spraying it on with my cheap sprayer from Harbor Freight. I believe it was around $20, maybe less. I can't remember for sure, but very cheap. And it does a really good job. You just have to make sure you clean it out really well after every time you use it. And I just sprayed on this flat paint, and then I will at the end put on a clear coat over it. You could leave it flat, although it's really hard to keep flat paint clean. It scuffs and gets dirty marks on it very easily, just like if you had flat paint on your walls in your home, kind of the same deal. Now I'm flipping these over and doing the second coat of paint on them. I did quite a few coats actually, although I'm not going to film all of them. And then I come back and do the second coat of paint on the piece while those are drying. In this video, you're going to kind of get to see the process, like which steps I do in which order. So I thought you guys might appreciate seeing what I do while things are drying. I try and always be busy and doing things in an order to where dry time won't affect my time on the project. So now I'm painting this whole thing here, and you'll see there's like a little piece that's missing in the front there, and I replaced it towards the end. For this piece, I flip it upside down. You may have been wondering how come I didn't flip the other one upside down, but it's because it was completely flat with no weird details. This I needed to paint underneath the top, and I also needed to paint these detailed legs, so I flip it upside down first, let it dry a little bit, and then flip it right side up and continue painting. This way you get way better coverage and you get to do those underneath parts without making it too difficult. This project also took 2 coats, and I do the first coat usually in a horizontal pattern, and then the second coat I go back in a vertical up and down pattern. This gets you really good coverage compared to going back and doing it in the same direction 2 times. Now it's time to get off this old tired finish on top of this dresser, the little nightstand dresser thing. Like, it's kind of like a miniature dresser in a way. But I just used some 80 grit sandpaper and got the whole finish off. Like I was saying before, the clear coat on here was super thick. Whatever poly they used, it was probably an oil-based poly, and it was really, really thick on there. So it took me a little bit of elbow grease to get it off with this sandpaper, but it's not impossible. It just takes some extra time. And throughout this sanding, I did change out the sandpaper about 2 times. Now I'm going to fill in this crack with some wood filler, the same wood filler that I used before. This wood filler actually worked pretty well, and I would definitely recommend it. Now I'm going to go over it with 220 grit, and I'm going to sand the paint off of the edges with the 220. I prefer to do the edges with 220 when removing the finish and when smoothing it, just because it doesn't damage the sides like an 80 grit could. And then I go over that spot where I filled in the crack and make sure that I remove all the wood filler off of the surface and leave only the part that's in the crack. And I make sure to smooth the top until it feels silky smooth to the touch. Once the wood filler was finally dry here in the drawers, I did the same thing, just sanded off the excess wood filler until it was nice and smooth and flat. You can't really tell, I don't know why the video didn't pick it up, but there was some yellowing, some stains that were coming through from the wood on the white paint, and then there was a stain in the center part that I needed to fix. If I were to just paint over that, it would continue to show up after every layer of paint. So what you have to use in an instance like this is a product by Zinsser called shellac, and I get it in a spray can because it's easier to apply that way and you don't have to wash a brush. This stuff is really hard to wash off of brushes. So you just spray on a good coat in the areas that are stained or yellowing, and it completely locks in that stain, so that way the next coat of paint that you're going to do, it will cover the stain and look like nothing was ever there. So I'm just covering all these areas that I saw that were yellowing, which was quite a bit. You never know what's going to happen with a piece, which is why I always just do a first coat and then wait a little while before I do the second coat to give time for these stains to show up. I also just did like a preventative spray here. When you sand the finish off on pieces that were staining already with the finish on, it's really gonna have some stains come through. That's just the way it happens. But now I'm gonna go ahead and wait for that shellac to dry and stain the top of the other piece while I'm waiting. And this takes just a couple minutes. I just used a foam brush and a rag to wipe off the excess, and the color I picked was dark walnut. Once that was dry, I was able to put on the second coat, and I just did really good coats on the drawers so that I would not have to come back for the second coat on those drawers, and I could be done with painting the piece. And when that dried, I went ahead and sanded off the finish on the top. This was way easier. The clear coat on this piece was very thin, and so I just sanded it off super quick and then hit the whole thing with 220 to smooth it out. Same stain, dark walnut, although this piece was oak, so it did appear a little bit lighter. Here's the clear coat I'm going to be using. It is Polycrylic by Minwax, and I am doing it in a gloss finish because I love the way that shiny, beautiful wood looks, and it's also way easier to keep clean when you have little fingers in the home that like to smudge dirty marks all over everything. So I just put on a really good couple coats of this clear coat, and that way the piece was sealed and all that flat paint was now a glossy finish paint, and it turned out exactly how I wanted it to, with a nice sheen to it. Something I want to mention also is you do not need to water down a clear coat. It is already water-based and pretty watery and thin to begin with, so use it straight as it is in your spray gun. Once everything was dry, I was able to go ahead and put on these handles here, and I just am an eyeballer, guys. If you are somebody who likes to meticulously measure things, then you're probably cringing right now, but I'm a pretty good eyeballer. So I just eyeballed these handles on there and they turned out really well. Oh, and another thing is you do need to spray paint your screws that you're going to use to apply these on, since they show. But here they are all done, and they are now in my master bedroom. They look so cute now, and I fixed that one little piece that was missing between the second drawer and the third drawer on the little mini dresser. But look at that wood stain. Doesn't it look gorgeous against the white and the silver? I just love it so much. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Don't forget to head over to Ashley Lauren's channel and check out her 2 side tables, and have a great day.